Americans keep saying they need more money to be happy, but new data show the real problem isn't how much we have, it's how we spend and save it. Malaysia is moving to ban social media for kids under 16, as a growing body of research says smartphones are rewiring childhood and fueling a mental health crisis. Trump's Department of Government Efficiency has quietly vanished, even as his big, beautiful bill blows a hole in the deficit and protects Big Pharma's profits. Senator Rand Paul is warning that Trump's escalating strikes near Venezuela could fracture the very movement that put him in the White House. And FBI Director Kash Patel stands accused of turning elite SWAT teams and government jets into perks for himself and his country singer girlfriend. All that and more today on Filtered. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Hi, and welcome. Thanks for joining me today. It is a beautiful, beautiful day here in South Florida. I hope it's beautiful wherever you are. It is Monday, November 24th, 2025. Here in the United States, we're rolling into our holiday week for Thanksgiving. I'll be leaving tomorrow to fly back to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I grew up, to spend time with family. If it is a holiday time for you, I hope you enjoy it, can spend time with family and friends, reconnecting. No market update yesterday as the markets were closed. Let's dive right in to issue one, money and happiness. New data shows Americans don't want to spend more, they want to save. According to new polling for MarketWatch, Americans are telling a very different story about money and happiness than the consumer economy around them. Only about half of respondents say the way they use and manage money makes them happy. But when asked what actually makes them happier, nearly 3/4 said saving or investing more. Only a fraction said spending more would do it. This new data arrives as the Gallup World Happiness Report shows U.S. happiness dropping to a record low. MarketWatch interviewed people who actually feel good about their financial lives and found a pattern. The happiest people aren't chasing bigger purchases. They're finding satisfaction in freedom, in control over their time, and in the small moments that money can enhance rather than dominate. Author Morgan Housel, in his book, The Art of Spending Money, says savings aren't about deprivation. They're about independence and the ability to live life on your terms. For many Americans, that appears to be the missing ingredient. Okay, what's the real message here? If you don't have enough food to pay for your rent or feed your kids, you're going to be unhappy. And the solution for you is you got to have more money. But for so many Americans, the issue is not more money, it's what you do with the money. Just spending on more stuff doesn't generate happiness. Saving, investing, having that peace of mind, knowing you can do whatever you want to do tomorrow, this weekend, on vacation. That's where real happiness comes from. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. So I don't know everyone YouGov Marketplace queried for this poll. Certainly, I've seen a lot of polling data showing an incredibly high percentage of Americans are one paycheck away from being insolvent, of being homeless, of not being able to pay their rent or mortgage. So I don't want to make light of that real issue. It's been a great time in America if you're in the top 10%, certainly the top 1%, and even better for the top 0.01%. Bottom 90%, the last decade, 15 years, not so much. Let's not kid ourselves. But I do think the report is on to something in that simply spending more money isn't the key to happiness. Once you have, very important caveat, once you have basic needs met, if you have a roof over your head, if you have some form of reliable transportation, if you have healthy, nutritious food to feed your family and yourself, more money to buy more stuff at the mall doesn't generate happiness. Again, to reiterate the key findings of this survey, when they actually talked to people who said, I am happy, It wasn't correlated to having a 10 or 20 or 30,000 square foot home. It wasn't correlated to having that third car or fourth car or fifth car. It was quite often correlated to having more money in a savings account, in investments, in a 401k if you're here in the United States, in owning stocks, knowing that your future will be paid for, knowing that you can retire when you want to, knowing you can take a vacation, knowing you can perhaps do a shift in your career and not worry about that immediate income. And this is essential because I know, and you may know people too, who make $2 million a year, but they're on a treadmill. They're not happy because they're spending $2.2 million a year. So every single year they go into more debt. Every year they got to do more billable hours at the law firm or at the investment bank where they work. And they're never really happy because they always feel like they are treading water, barely keeping up. On the other hand, there are people who make below the average income in America, an average American family, depending on what stat you use, about $66,000 a year. There are people who make $50,000 a year and are perfectly happy because they've consistently saved, they've consistently invested. They didn't buy the biggest possible house that they could afford. They bought the smallest possible house where they could feel comfortable and safe, and they banked the rest. I could tell you, I've personally been poor in my life. I had a stretch from the age of 25 to about 39 where everything I touched failed. Talk radio shows, syndicated TV shows, website, news websites, everything I touched, failure, failure, failure. I had years where I had like $2,000 of income. So I've been there. I'm not someone who, oh, look, I had a lot of privileges growing up and had a, what you would call upper middle class background. My father was an engineer. So I faced no deprivation whatsoever as a child and through college, none whatsoever. So I'm not asking for sympathy. And I'm definitely not facing any deprivation now, nor have I in the last quarter century. But I did have a chunk of about 15 years where it was really touch and go. It was crashing on friends' couches. It was back to mom and dad's when I was long out of college for a while. So I'm not just giving you this perspective from a purely academic perspective. I've been there. I've also been on the other extreme of things. And I can tell you that the research from this organization resonates as truthful with me as well. It gives me great peace of mind to know that every single month I am putting not insignificant sums into more holdings for my family, principally in S&P 500 and low-cost index funds. In my case, a lot of technology, information technology, low-cost index funds. Do they go down sometimes? Yes. Oh boy, did they ever, as recently as April this year. But over time, they go up, and it gives me a lot of peace of mind. Here's what I like, and you can say this is weird of me, and I am a big proponent of minimalism in a lot of aspects of life. But I could tell you, I get a lot of joy walking through the mall, looking at pretty things, and here's the catch, feeling like, wow, there's nothing here I particularly want or that would make me happy. Now, I will say that only happens once you get to the point, at least for me, where I knew I could buy the stuff. If you absolutely can't have something because you have no money, every single thing in the store window is going to seem tantalizing. And maybe you're different. Maybe you're a better person than I am. Maybe you are someone of very limited means and you can walk through a mall and see beautiful clothes, beautiful jewelry, knickknacks, and think, I don't care. For me, it didn't really happen until I did get a certain level of economic security. So, what does this all mean? What do you do if you have your basic economic security and you're still not happy? The results of this survey shows you've got to spend your time on experiences. It doesn't mean a first-class ticket around the world on the most expensive cruise line that would cost $200,000. It may mean simply working part-time instead of full-time because you want to spend more time playing pickleball or starting a marathoning, routine where you're trying to compete in marathons. It's preserving your time. Ultimately, the thing money does that people value the most is it gives them their time back to do what they want. And if what you want is to spend more time in malls buying stuff, taking care of stuff, unpacking stuff, installing stuff, hiring someone to install stuff, that gets old very quickly. And I realize it may sound tantalizing if you don't have a lot of stuff. We live in a culture where everything on Instagram and Facebook is like, hey, look at my new stuff. Look at my private jet. Look at my jewels. It seems glamorous, but ultimately it's not what creates more happiness. Maybe for you, it means spending even more time seeing friends and family in other cities and using your money to get you there. Maybe it's spending more money treating other friends. Maybe it's using your money to take care of needy people in your own community. There's no one set way of doing it. There's no one size fits all, except for this. If you are fortunate enough to have money beyond the immediate needs of your shelter, your food, and your safety, spend more time really thinking about how you can use your money to create experiences for yourself. And I don't mean just a check mark. Oh, I saw the South Pole and penguins. I mean experiences that are meaningful to you and to other people. If you do that, chances are you will actually become happier, and your money can be a source of happiness, not a source of dread or annoyance. Back in just a moment with more. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Welcome back to Filtered. I'm your host, TJ Walker. So what are we doing here? If this is your first time to the show, every day I look at the top 5 business, technology, and culture stories of the day, and then analyze them, filter them through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills. Based on my own background and experience in the field, working for 40 years with billionaires, CEOs, Wall Street mavens, presidents of countries, prime ministers, professional athletes, you name it, I've helped them with their communication skills and personal development skills. I also have about 12 million student enrollments in my online courses. So what we're doing here is based on my expertise. I'm not here as just a reporter or just as a news analyst. I'm doing it through this particular prism. So it's kind of a hybrid show. It's a news show. It's a business news show. It's a news commentary show. And it's a personal development show, all wrapped into one. And I think that's what makes it interesting and unique. I hope you do as well. I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist. I'm not giving you political spin. So if you're looking for someone who will call it straight, I hope you spend some time right here. Let's dive right into issue 2. Malaysia moves to ban social media for kids under the age of 16. Malaysia is set to become the latest country to crack down on children's access to social media. According to the Associated Press, the government has approved a plan to ban accounts for anyone under 16 in the year 2026. Platforms may be required to verify users' ages through national ID cards or passports as part of a broader effort to cut down on cyberbullying, scams, and online exploitation. Other countries are moving in the same direction. Australia's nationwide ban for under 16s takes effect in December with enormous penalties for platforms that break the rules. Denmark and Norway are both advancing similar laws. All of this is happening as researchers warn that smartphones and social media are fundamentally altering childhood. Jonathan Haidt, author of The Anxious Generation, describes the shift from play based childhoods to phone based childhoods and links it to rising rates of anxiety, depression, and self harm. Malaysia's move shows that governments are now acting on these warnings, not just debating them. Okay, so what's the real message here? Hats off to Malaysia. Apparently, the people in Malaysia actually care about whether their kids live or die, whether they are injecting poison into their brains. That's why Malaysia is banning all social media for anyone under the age of 16. And apparently, Mark Zuckerberg and all the other social media mavens didn't give enough billions of dollars on the leaders of Malaysia. And Malaysia is free to do what's in the best interest of their kids. Good for you. Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper here. This is a huge, huge problem. And I'm a huge fan. Let me put my cards on the table of Jonathan Haidt, who is the author of The Anxious Generation. Hugely influential work. It is been on the bestseller list now for years, and it rightfully so. His concept of we're changing people's childhoods from play-based childhood to phone-based childhood. That is absolutely true. I think it's an utter tragedy the way so many kids don't simply go out and play, go ride a bike, go play to the playground. And we're seeing an entire generation of kids who sit at home staring at their cell phones. Meanwhile, mom and dad are often patting themselves on the back. Oh, I'm such a protective parent. Oh, I wouldn't dare let my child walk 2 blocks to the grocery store, to the convenience store to get milk. Oh, that would be too dangerous. It's absolutely nonsense, as Jonathan Haidt has pointed out. Going on the streets virtually anywhere in America is dramatically safer than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. Violent crime against children on the streets is at an all-time low. Yet meanwhile, we are pumping our kids with filth, with nonsense, with greed, with envy, to the point where they are going, these aren't his terms, he's a trained psychologist, my term, they're going crazy. Let's look at some more of the facts here of what's going on. Girls are hit the hardest, according to the most recent research. 24/7 cyberbullying, gossip, exclusion, social comparison online. And guess what? Their rates of suicide going way up. Their rates of self-harm going way up. The research also shows that heavy daily social media use, 3 to 4 hours per day, is directly correlated to worse mental health. Now, let me be fair here. There's not 100% definitive causation here. It has not been proven, but that's pretty strong correlation. This is not the same thing as me saying, I did a rain dance today and it rained, therefore I caused the rain. No, I think the evidence is much stronger. Now, what this particular social psychologist recommends is no smartphones before age 14, no social media before 16, phone-free schools, and more free play. Now, I notice in my own household, I have to say, look, you don't even get access to your cell phone until you go out and play. And this to me is, I don't know if I want to call it a tragedy, but it's profoundly sad. I mean, when I was a kid, Nobody had to beg me to go outside and play. Occasionally to turn the TV off. Yeah, I was guilty of watching Gilligan's Island and the Beverly Hillbillies and Star Trek every day after school. But I also wanted to go out and play. I wanted to play basketball. I played hide and seek with friends every day. That was considered a normal part of childhood. These days, not so much. Let's look at what's happening around the world. So I mentioned Australia is starting its ban. It begins December 10th for kids under the age of 16. They can't have access to social media. Denmark, Norway are moving to age 15 or 16. And there's now enforcement demanding that kids have some kind of proof, that anyone has proof with ID cards, passports. Because here in the United States, there are a number of politicians who talk about it, but they're instantly written off as, oh, well, they're anti-technology. They're part of the radical left. They want to put rules on the private sector. We hear that time and time again. And yet, last time I checked, Australia was not some communistic Fidel Castro Cuba hellhole. Australia is a pretty nice economy, pretty nice society there. Lots of nice stuff in Australia. They somehow have figured out a way to put some constraints on big tech companies without the whole country becoming, 1968 Soviet Russia. They somehow did it. So I do want to warn you on the messaging here. One of the things that's happening in the United States is the corporate oligarchs in technology, the Mark Bezos, or the Jeff Bezos, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musks, they are a part of this group, and their venture capitalist friends like Mark Andreessen have developed this ideology that anyone who ever wants to put any rules on them, anyone who wants to say, no, let's actually respect the traditions of antitrust in America. Let's balance public health with private profit. Those people are no longer the centrists. These people are no longer in the vein of Teddy Roosevelt, who was very much in favor of breaking up trust. We're simply going to call anyone who cares about public health and safety a radical leftist extremist who hates America, hates capitalism. And they have the bully pulpits to do it. Elon Musk has a larger megaphone than you do and than I do. He's got all of X and a lot of the other media too. So they're changing the terms of the debate. Now, perhaps you think I am too old-fashioned and conservative, that I don't want children looking at nonstop filth and what could be the equivalent of heroin into their brain and destroying their brain. I think we need some government restraints. Certainly, age gating for social media is something that could easily happen without there being any harms to capitalism or our democracy. We already do it with alcohol. What is your evidence that a 12-year-old drinking half a beer is more dangerous than a 12-year-old who spends 4 hours a day playing video games and on social media and on some sort of chat room where there's 25-year-olds? What is your evidence? I would suggest you have none. Now, I'm not advocating that 12-year-olds start drinking half a beer or a full beer either. My point is simply, we already age gate certain access to certain things in our society. Age gate driving. You may be a smart, competent, talented, thoughtful 13-year-old who's already physically mature. We don't let you drive because on balance, 13-year-olds driving cars down the highway would be a horrible idea. We can kind of buy into that. We already age gate buying alcohol. You got to be 21 in most cases to buy it. What is your evidence that alcohol is less destructive than the kind of nonsense, bullying, perversion that kids can get all day long on social media? So this is why I am a huge fan of what Malaysia is doing, a huge fan of what Australia, what Denmark and Norway are doing And we need to start forming some political base of support here in the United States for this. Because, again, you can call me a conservative. I think there's something to this idea of make America great again. But part of what made America great 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago is kids actually could play in their childhood. They could go out in the streets and play. They could go to the playground. They would get on a bike. They would play hide and seek. I'm in favor of trying to create a society that will, in fact, get us to go back to those times. If that makes me too much of a conservative, well, I guess guilty as charged. I'm TJ Walker, back in a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to meeting interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Thanks for listening. If you like today's episode, you'll love my online courses at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Check them out now and level up your skills. DOGE and deficits. Trump's efficiency department vanishes as the deficit explodes. According to Reuters, President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, known as DOGE, or in some quarters as DOGE, has quietly disappeared 8 months before its charter was set to expire. The administration now acknowledges that DOGE, quote, doesn't exist in any meaningful way, despite months of high-profile claims that it was saving taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. The problem is that none of those savings were ever independently verified. There was never any public accounting of what DOGE actually accomplished. What has been verified is the impact of Trump's massive, big, beautiful bill. Nonpartisan budget analysis says it will add trillions of dollars to the deficit over the next decade. Those larger deficits are pushing interest payments toward $1 trillion a year, money that buys nothing new. It's simply the cost of past decisions. And while the administration claims to be fighting waste, it weakened provisions that would have lowered prescription drug prices and saved taxpayers billions. The pharmaceutical industry gets protections, the public gets the bill. Okay, so what's the real message here? DOGE quietly snuck out of town. It's out of DC without saying goodbye because it realized it had accomplished nothing. If you think government is more efficient today after DOGE, you are utterly fooling yourself. The only thing it did is show once again that large interest groups are going to continue to get what they want from the federal government and shaft you and me in the process. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. So this was great political branding initially. It got people excited because everybody, I'm included, everybody thinks there's waste in the federal government. The problem is one person's waste is another person's essential spending. So it's very hard to really cut much from the federal government. Again, I'm not saying there's not bloat, but we could differ on where the bloat is. One thing that cannot be debated is there's not a single penny of government spending that doesn't have a lot of people passionate about that money being spent. So let's look at some facts. DOGE, again, didn't delete waste. It helped camouflage who is looting the Treasury. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, says Trump's one big, beautiful bill will add $3.4 trillion to deficits over 10 years. That's going to add billions of dollars more in extra interest rates from that bill alone. So here's a perfect example of government waste that DOGE did not address. Medicare drug price negotiations under existing laws were projected to save roughly $100 million over 10 years, plus billions more in lower out-of-pocket costs for seniors. But the so-called Big Beautiful Bill changed that. The negotiations under existing law were protected, and they got rid of that. They added special exemptions so the drug companies can make an extra $8.8 to $10.9 billion in extra revenue. So when you hear stories about, people smuggling in prescription drugs from Canada, or how much less expensive drugs are in the United Kingdom or anywhere in Europe, the first response is, well, that's of course, they have socialized medicine. We all know how bad socialism is. That's the instant knee-jerk response. That's not why the prescription drugs are less expensive. They're less expensive because the government says, we're going to purchase all the drugs and we demand the best possible rate. We demand a huge discount because we're a bulk purchaser. It's basically the concept of why you can get things less expensively if you go to Costco. It's why when I go to Costco, I can get a container of raspberries this big for $4.99, whereas if I go to the Publix grocery store where I am, I get a pint that's half as big, also $4.99. I save 50%. It's basically 100% more expensive if I go to the grocery store. So it's the same concept. Governments around the world understand that. So they strike deals to buy drugs in bulk at a huge discount for their entire population. Now, the United States has a big population buying drugs, and the government does pay for it most of the time through Medicare, through Medicaid, through health for veterans. So the government's already spending it. But because we like to live under this fiction of, we're private sector people here, we don't believe in these evil socialists, even though our government spends more money on healthcare than any government in the world. Shh, not supposed to know that. We live under this fiction, and the pharmaceutical executives, pretty shrewd group, they have just figured out if we funnel campaign cash to politicians, if we spend millions of dollars on campaign contributions, they'll let us charge whatever we want. And we're going to get billions and billions of dollars more money back because we can charge the high prices. We can make Americans sort of the sucker customers of our business. And you're paying for it. I'm paying for it. Everybody pays for it. Now, of course, it is true that pharmaceutical companies do have to make money, or they're not going to have enough money to do research for the next drug. So I'm not suggesting they're all evil. I love pharmaceuticals that have saved my life, and I love penicillin, and I've had to use various drugs as other members of anyone's family does. At some point, everyone needs some kind of vaccine or pharmaceutical. So I'm not one saying that pharmaceutical companies are reflexively bad. No. I'm saying what is bad are the politicians who could strike a much better deal to save government money and simply don't, because they have, I don't want to hurt the feelings. My buddy who's the CEO of this big pharma company, he makes $60 million a year, and he takes me to the Super Bowl for free. How's it going to look if he's got to go from a $60 million a year salary to $30 million a salary? My goodness, he might not give me free Super Bowl tickets, or he might not give campaign cash to my PAC to help me get elected next time. That's really what is the problem with our large government in a nutshell. You could say I'm oversimplifying. There are other issues, other examples of waste, yes. But ultimately, it comes down to businesses have figured out how to game the system Very little of it, frankly, is going to foreign aid, less than 1%. And very little of it actually goes to poor, needy people. Our government, it goes around and around in circles, paying off various special interest groups a lot more than they could get in the private sector. Something that didn't get much attention recently was the demise of the penny, the copper penny, which cost about 3 or 4 cents to make. Why did that happen? Again, if you talk to the typical voter out there, why is the government so big? Many of them would say, well, we're giving money to poor people who are too lazy. And yet, the 3 or 4 cents we spent to make a penny, which cumulatively adds up to tens of millions of dollars every year, it was to make copper mines happy, copper mining executives, copper mining CEOs, and shareholders happier. They're like, we know it doesn't make any sense to spend 3 cents on copper to make a penny, but we love the fact that the government gives us a big paycheck to buy stuff they don't really need. That's why we did it. And we had politicians from states, and this is bipartisan. There were Democrats and Republicans who represented states where there were copper mines, who said, hey, we can't get rid of the penny. It's too essential. So I will give credit. It did happen under the Trump administration. At least they're not wasting money on the penny anymore. But comparatively, that's pennies to the amount of money we waste every single year simply because we're unwilling to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies. And if you really want to talk about waste, there's no organization with more waste than the Defense Department. But then they've got the perfect political messaging. If you dare criticize defense spending, automatically you're un-American. Automatically you're a part of the radical left. And so that conversation is off the table. And the political dynamics are such that if you're a Republican, you're pro-military, that's your brand. And if you're a Democrat, you're constantly worried about someone calling you a coward, anti-military, uh, anti-defending America. So you generally, if you're a Democrat running for office or you're an incumbent member of Congress, you're like, I'll show them I'm tough too. Yes, I will vote for all the money that the Defense Department wants, and I'll give them more. I'll force them to take even more. Believe it or not, that is what exists. We're going to switch to our next issue in just a moment that does relate to the military. But first, let's look at you. Noel writes in, the real fix would be to do a full evaluation of the actual spending. Well, Noel, I'm going to partially agree with you and partially disagree. Most Americans have no idea what the federal government actually spends money on. You could evaluate it and spend more time educating people, but that's only part of the problem. The part of the problem is there's nothing you can point to in the budget and say, well, that's clearly waste. Nobody wants that. Nobody's going to mind if we get rid of that. It's not like a household. People love to make comparisons between government spending and household spending. In my own household, I can say, hey, has anyone used the Paramount Plus streaming service in the last year? I haven't. And if my wife says no, my daughter says no, it's going to be really easy for me to delete that service because there's no constituency within the Walker household to keep spending $11 a month or whatever it is on the Paramount Plus streaming system. There is nothing like that in the federal government. Again, what you might think of as waste, what I might think of as some subsidy to a tobacco farmer, and they get really angry if you call it a subsidy. We might think, well, that's waste. Let's get rid of that. But those tobacco farmers will fight tooth and nail, and they will do everything they can to the politicians in their state and say, look, we will destroy you politically. We'll run candidates against you. We will fund your opponents unless you continue to give us our stuff. Once people get stuff, whether it's in the form of money or anything else from the federal government, it is perceived as an entitlement forever. And the biggest recipient of stuff like that, Elon Musk. Jeff Bezos. They have Google, Palantir. They have so many big, juicy, giant contracts. Now, you can argue that they're working hard for that, but that is, in fact, where our money is going. Back in just a moment with more stories, this time about our military and what we're doing or should be doing in Venezuela. Want a shortcut to powerful communication skills? Download the TJ Walker Success Library, 5 of my best-selling books for only $9.95. Go to tjwalker.com/books. Instant access, big impact. I've had entire YouTube channels wiped out overnight, so if you enjoy this show, don't lose track of me. The safest way is my newsletter, substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Sign up for free and you'll get exclusive commentary, live session alerts, and first access to new tools. Again, that's substack.com. Just search for TJ Walker or go to substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Your direct line to everything I do. Senator Rand Paul warns Trump's Venezuela strikes could shatter GOP unity. Senator Rand Paul is issuing a loud warning to President Trump and to Republicans who have supported him. According to Politico, Paul says Trump's expanding military campaign near Venezuela could fracture the very coalition that brought him to power. On CBS's Face the Nation yesterday, Paul said many people, including himself, backed Trump because he promised to avoid new foreign wars. But now Trump is escalating controversial boat strikes in the waters off Central and South America and is preparing to label a Venezuelan organization as a foreign terrorist group. Paul says the move effectively allows Trump to act as if the United States is at war without congressional approval or public debate. Paul also revealed that despite chairing the Senate Homeland Security Committee, he has received zero briefings on these operations. That's unusual, folks. Meanwhile, the United Nations has condemned the killings linked to these strikes as violations of international law. Paul argues that the real solution to drug trafficking is addressing addiction and demand at home, not launching undeclared conflicts abroad. Okay, what's the real message here? One of the biggest appeals of Donald Trump, all the way back to 2016, is he was willing to say, enough of this typical Republican nonsense of starting wars everywhere. Let's bring our soldiers home and focus on making the country better. That was one huge appeal he had. Now, it seems like he's throwing that away, saying, I could be the dictator of the world. Oh, I think this person might be a drug dealer. Let me just bomb them. No need for a trial, a jury, a judge, a conviction. I can just kill anybody I want. And if you look like you're dark skinned or speak Spanish or know anything about Venezuela, boom, you're toast. Let's dig a little deeper here. So Senator Rand Paul is more of a libertarian sort, obviously. His father, Ron Paul, sort of the godfather of the modern political libertarian movement in America. The son is following in his footsteps. He's one of the few Republican senators who has occasionally, and I mean occasionally, spoken out against some of the excesses of the Trump administration. He still typically votes in favor of what anything Trump asks for, but he is one of the few Republicans in the Senate to say, hey, this is a clear-cut violation of either conservative principles or more libertarian principles or traditional principles of our party. Now, it's one thing when Trump does something that is very popular. So Trump has deviated from traditional Republican orthodoxy in many areas. The traditional Republican orthodoxy says, let's cut the social safety net. Let's cut Social Security. And Trump's like, oh, no, I don't want to touch Social Security. And he's by and large kept that promise. So there are times when Trump is differed from Senator Paul, but it's had a strong base of support. But starting wars needlessly when the United Nations condemns it. That's not one of those things where there's a huge constituency. That's what's different about this issue. Let's go a little deeper into some of the facts. So Trump, again, he ran every time he's run for office on this idea of stopping dumb wars. Now he seems to be inventing one off of Venezuela's coast. Let me ask you, if you're an American, how often has a Venezuelan come to your house and attacked you? How often has a Venezuelan come to your home and forced you to buy some drugs that you didn't want or that you couldn't have bought from some other source if it were illegal? And I'm not recommending you do that. I'm guessing the answer is never. And that's, in fact, why you don't see polls showing some huge support for starting a war against Venezuela. Now, Trump is escalating the controversy with these boat strikes in neutral, what's supposed to be neutral waters, just bombing boats in the Caribbean, saying, well, I kind of maybe sort of think they look like drug dealers, so let's just kill them all. That's not how America is supposed to operate. That's not traditionally what we've done. And that is, in fact, why United Nations human rights organizations are condemning this. Now, you could say, well, I don't like the UN. They're a bunch of radical leftists. Okay, I don't have the time to debate you on that today, but who is really in favor of this? The administration has labeled Venezuela's Cartel de las Soles a terrorist group. Okay, I'm not an expert on all the ins and outs of Venezuela. Let's say hypothetically they are. It doesn't mean that you can just pick out a fishing boat on a hunch, bomb it, blow it to smithereens, kill people on a hunch. Because as we've already seen in the last few months, there have been some accidents. There have been some people blown to pieces, and oops, this guy's just a local fisherman who comes home every night and brings the fish to his family in his little village, and they're gone now. They're absolutely gone. There's no doubt Venezuela is a mess. I am not in any way suggesting I support the current administration running that country. But guess what? There are a lot of countries in the world where we don't like the government. I personally don't like the leadership of Russia, but I don't see this administration say, hey, these people in Russia are terrorists, therefore we got to bomb them and go to war against them. Could. You're not going to see that happen, nor do I think that would especially be a good idea. We could certainly stand up to Russia a little more often, but I don't want to go to war against every country who has leadership that I don't like. I don't particularly like the leadership of Saudi Arabia. I'm not a huge fan of Mohammed Sawbone Salman, or Bonesaw Salman. That's what the MBS stands for. I'm not a huge fan of his, but am I in favor of the United States bombing ships that are coming out of Saudi Arabia? No, I'm not. So this is one of those areas where, say what you will about Trump, he typically does things that do one of two things. They either line his own pockets, as in the case of countless meme coins and other crypto nonsense he's done in this term, or it panders to some base. And going and starting a war in Venezuela and rallying the entire world against us doesn't really seem to fit in either of those two categories. So you just kind of have to chalk it up to, here's a guy, he's got power. He realizes he can't at least legally run for another term. He might not ever leave the White House, but he realizes he's got power. He's never going to have more power than he does right now. So he might as well just do stuff because he can, and he might not ever have a chance to again. If you have some other rationale, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. We are live today, broadcasting and simulcasting across Facebook, across YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, they're coming and going for us. We're on Podbean. We are on Substack Live. We're on half a dozen other platforms. And we're doing a special broadcast, special stream for our friends on TikTok. We're here for you live. So if you want to post a question or comment, I can talk to you in real time. If you're watching this or listening to this on demand, post comments. I do read all comments. I typically try to respond within 24 to 48 hours. I do read every single comment, so I do appreciate you stopping by. Noel writes in, defense spending is the big one, and spending on insurance for everyday persons. Talking about our previous story related to DOGE and trying to cut government spending when they really didn't cut much of anything. A little PBS spending, a few pennies by getting rid of the penny, but pretty much not anything else. Noel, thanks for your comments, as always. Speaking of more government waste, this next story, it's starting to get some attention, as it should, but it still is not generating the outrage that the typical waste, fraud, and abuse by a high-ranking government official receives. I'm talking about, of course, the latest from the aptly named Kash Patel. Back in a moment. We'll be right back after this break. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Most people can't afford a full-time coach. And even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Want to advertise to ambitious upscale professionals who actually care about communication, success, and results? Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. And no, we don't take ads for crypto, supplements, or junk food. If you've ever struggled with nerves, unclear messaging, or just not being taken seriously, this is for you. I created the TJ Walker Success Library as a crash course in professional level communication. You get 5 downloadable books for just $9.95 that walk you through public speaking, media training, persuasive communication, confidence building, and daily practice routines. This is the same training I've delivered to presidents, CEOs, and leaders in 45 nations, boiled down and instantly accessible. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download them now. Welcome back to Filtered. I'm your host, TJ Walker. More comments coming in. Life and Hunter says, Chump, I guess you mean Trump, and it's probably not a spelling error, wants the energy resources, talking about why he would start a war in Venezuela. Maybe it's as good of an excuse as any, a good of a rationale. But again, if you can just get foreign countries to give you bribes by buying your own crypto coin, I don't know why you'd even want to go to all the trouble of having to deal with oil, because it gets quite messy. We're going to dive right into the next issue. Kash Patel turns the FBI into a Perk machine. According to the Times, FBI Director Kash Patel is facing rising questions inside the Bureau about his judgment, his ethics, and the use of public resources. The Times reports that Patel ordered an FBI SWAT team to protect his girlfriend, country singer Alexis Wilkins, during her appearance at the NRA convention in Atlanta. These are agents trained to breach barricaded buildings and handle high-risk operations, yet they were reassigned to act as personal security at a political event. When they determined the venue was secure and left, Patel reportedly berated their commander for leaving Wilkins without a taxpayer-funded escort. This wasn't an isolated choice. SWAT teams have been repeatedly diverted to guard Wilkins at events in multiple cities. Patel has also leaned heavily on government jets for personal travel, including golf trips and visits to a private hunting ranch. All of this comes as he has supported cuts to the FBI's own budget. Inside the Bureau, critics are asking why elite tactical teams and expensive aircraft are being used to support the director's personal life. And they're asking an even bigger question: how can the nation's top law enforcement agency be led by someone who treats it as a personal perk machine? Okay, what's the real message here? DOGE has disbanded. Meanwhile, there's more government waste, fraud, and abuse than ever. In part, the top of the FBI, Kash Patel, seems to think that millions of dollars should be spent ferrying his girlfriend around the country and around the world. He wants to live like a Trump and have gold on everything occasionally and not have his feet touch the ground. It's an absolute obscenity, and it makes you wonder, when is Trump going to say, hey, I get the kingly treatment, I get the real treatment, not some low-level assistant like Kash Patel? Let's dig a little bit deeper here. Here's the one thing that Kash Patel does have in his favor. Trump hates to admit that he's ever wrong. He absolutely hates to admit it. And by firing Kash Patel, which many are urging him to do, he would be admitting, I kind of screwed up in hiring this guy, because he hasn't fired a lot of people this term, as you may recall. So that's kind of the one saving grace Kash Patel has going for him, is that if there is someone in his administration that drives the mainstream media crazy, that makes especially liberals and Democrats say this person is committing fraud and horrible, generally Trump just doubles down. That's my guy. If he's owning the libs, if he's making the libs angry, generally that helps your stature within the Trump administration. And there certainly are a lot of so-called liberals and those on the left and Democrats who are upset by Kash Patel. But the problem is there are a lot of conservatives who are saying this is waste, this is fraud. We have to worry about the precedent this sets for the next administration. And maybe when there's a time when administration we don't like gains power, do we really want this to be the new standard, that the head of the FBI gets to be treated like a king, and anyone he knows, not just a spouse, but in this case, a girlfriend, that they get the royal treatment too? So let me go over some of the facts here with you, because it is a bit outlandish. He recalled SWAT agents from a Utah operation after the killing of Trump ally Charlie Kirk so they could be reassigned to protect Wilkins at a political event. I can tell you right now, if there had been a Democratic administration and a Democratic appointment to be head of the FBI, and that head of the FBI removed investigators looking into the Charlie Kirk murder to protect his girlfriend singing somewhere, that would be the biggest scandal since Watergate. It would literally be the only thing ever talked about 24 hours a day on Fox News Channel. That would be seen as such a contemptuous, irresponsible use of resources. But because he's on that team, I'm just hearing about it right now myself. No one talks about it. Also because he's using so many federal government goodies. He's used a Gulfstream, a Boeing 757 for personal getaways, including going to a golf resort in Scotland, going hunting in Texas. And here's the catch. This is a sweetheart deal. And this isn't just for Kash Patel. This is for anyone who works in the government. You get essentially private air travel. It's paid for by the government, but it's just you. It takes off when you want to go. It lands when you want to go. There's no waiting in security lines. You really feel like you are a billionaire when you're flying on government planes. And I haven't been on a federal government plane, but I have been on government planes before. And it's nice. You just walk right up. The pilots address you as sir. They take off when you want to. They ask you, when would you like me to be waiting for you? It's a nice way of traveling. And I've never done it for personal use. I've only done it for government use. But this is what this guy does. And then the rule is you only have to pay the equivalent of a commercial ticket. So if you could somehow show that you could get an air ticket to Scotland from Washington, D.C. for $542.39, that's all you have to reimburse the government, even if it's using a big jet and tons of security and tons of fuel, and it ended up costing $190,000. You only have to pay that 500 and some bucks. It's a pretty sweet gig, and Kash Patel seems to be enjoying it. Boy, is he enjoying it. Now, there are increasing legal concerns within the Bureau over whether SWAT agents used as VIP guards for the girlfriend would have the same liability protections they get on real tactical missions. He also, Kash flew with the girlfriend to meet him near London, where she was picked up by his detail, transported in a U.S. Embassy vehicle, another use of official resources tied to personal relationships. He's certainly into all the swag and the trappings of the job, commemorative coins, branded jackets, perks. It's really cementing the idea that he's in this for the stuff. You may ask, well, who is Kash Patel? He's kind of a nobody podcaster, but he was a guy who said nice things about Donald Trump all the time. Let's also not forget that Kash Patel attacked former director Christopher Wray by name for using a government-funded G5 to go on vacations, saying maybe we should ground the plane. And then he did the exact same thing. So, folks, are you seeing a connection here? On the one hand, DOGE has been shut down, quietly left town, not a single documented sign of them saving a penny other than the penny for the United States federal government. Meanwhile, this guy is acting like Saudi royalty, flying all over the world, and you taxpayers, you're the rubes paying for this. And at some point, it does make you think Trump may say, this guy's getting too much attention. I don't like some attention. I don't mind it. I don't mind him annoying Democrats and centrists and liberals and the media, some, but he's getting too much attention. Maybe we just sweep this guy right out the door. Okay, let's shift gears here and head on over to our final segment of the day. This is the segment where I answer your questions. Every day I like to end the show by talking specifically to you about something unrelated to the news. I mean, here we are with Thanksgiving week. It's time for more reflection, time to really think about what's going on. It's important to you. That isn't just about going to work today or tomorrow. So I like to answer your questions about some aspect of communication skills or personal development issues. So today's question comes from Priya. She's a student in my class on freelance consulting, the 1-hour course for beginners. And the question is, how can beginners effectively market their freelance consulting services to attract high-paying clients? And I'm glad you talked about high-paying clients. The big mistake many young freelancers and junior freelancers have is they think, well, I'm not qualified to get a high-paying client. Let me go after the low-paying clients. Let me go after the babysitting gig for $10 an hour. Let me go after the general handyman services for $15 an hour. So that's a huge mistake if you want to build a real business and build even a middle-class lifestyle. You have to go after higher paying clients. Every single industry there is a division of highest paying clients, mid-range, and the people who are only going to pay based on price and want the absolute least expensive option possible. Now, there may be times if you're just starting out and you're trying to get some credentials, some track record, some references, and you're desperate to be able to eat today, where you may have to go after the lowest part of that food chain of the clients. You may have to go after the people who want the least expensive option. But it's never a good strategy to do that in the long run unless you have some ability to scale like Walmart does. But freelancing is different. I would strongly urge you position yourself day one as high end. Go after the most attractive clients in your niche. Typically, that means you have to specialize. So if you're good at every sort of handyman service, but you also happen to be really good at fixing the chillers for high-end residential pools by people who are wealthy enough to have not only a heater for their pool, but a chiller for the pool for those hot days, you may be much better off positioning yourself as the top expert in your community on repairing pool chillers. That's just an example. I have no idea what that niche is like. I can tell you from my own example, when I started off my business as a communications business, I said, well, okay, I can write press releases, I can write speeches, I can help you do video interviews. There was a dozen things I could say. Instead, I figured out, how can I specialize where I can get higher end clients? So I decided to specialize in media training. But even then, everyone could use media training at some point. You could be a freelance consultant yourself who's just done a self-help book or a self-published book and only have a couple $100 for a media training. So instead, I focused my business when I was starting out a quarter of a century ago for real, even though I've done trainings for 40 years. I started off running this as a serious business a quarter century ago. I decided to specialize in media training for senior executives at publicly traded corporations. And in truth, I had done a handful of those in the future, but I'd worked with everyone. But I wanted a way of reaching that market more. So everything in my website, my emails, my newsletter, my marketing said, I'm the guy who specializes in media training for senior executives at publicly traded corporations because they have the money. And at the time, I really needed some money, and it was a great positioning. Now, since then, I was able to expand and hit every kind of niche. But I would recommend you give some thought as to how you can pinpoint the part of the market that A, needs your service, B, wants your service, C, is going to definitely hire someone doing your service, and D, has the most money, and E, is willing to spend the money. Some people have money, but they don't want to spend it. You need to find people willing to spend the money. The other thing that I find is huge that not enough people take into consideration is if you can come up with a service that corporations and institutions need rather than selling to just an individual. Why is that significant? Because you can get someone to sign off on hiring you, and the money's not coming out of their pocket. It's already budgeted. So let's just say, for example, you are a freelancer in creating social media content. You could try to market yourself to mom and pop restaurants in your community, and they would love to get more social media attention. The problem is they probably only want to pay you with free food or a trade on your bar tab. You can't pay your own rent with that. There's probably small individual insurance companies, a two-person firm that want to improve their social media standing and would maybe pay you $25 an hour or something you consider, oh, that's a little better than I've had before on hourly fee. That might work. But there might be larger corporations, government entities in your town that also need to improve their social media standing. And for them, you could go to them with a package proposal, outline all the things you could do to improve their social media, make it better, refine it, revamp it, redo things, and give them a monthly fee of, I'll just toss out a number, $3,000. Whatever it is in your community, in your environment, in your economy, in your country, could be different. But in general, if you get a corporation to hire you, a government, a large entity, where the person saying yes is primarily concerned with quality rather than saving a few pennies and the money's not coming out of their own pocket, you can charge more. And that is exactly what I would do, Priya, if I were you, is figure out of all the things you do, what's most valuable and what's most valuable to the top end of the market. And then everything you do has got to be positioned that way. How you dress, if you're going for a part of the market where people care about how you dress. Now, it's not that you have to dress in a certain way. You might be trying to attract artists to have you represent their works in your gallery, and in which case you don't want to wear a suit and tie. You want to wear some sort of avant-garde, really colorful, artistic looking clothes. But you need to send a message to people that you are high end. Therefore, they should expect to pay you more. People don't want to be the first person to pay you the most you've ever had, but they also don't want to be seen as cheap. If you need brain surgery and the brain surgeon says, okay, this surgery is going to be $10,000 and maybe your insurance covers $8,000, you got to come up with $2,000. Most people are not going to go back and forth negotiating with the surgeon. They're going to think, oh, this person's professional. They went to medical school. They've already done 10,000 surgeries. There's sort of that respect and positioning. Now, you might not have a medical degree. I don't have a medical degree. But you can figure out how to position yourself in a way that signifies quality and credibility, even when you're starting out. You do not have to work your way up slowly by working with the smallest, cheapest clients in your industry. And in fact, often they're the worst ones to work with. The people who pay the least often want the most amount of your time and often don't listen to you. What I found is often the more you charge, the more your clients will listen to you and the happier they are. I'm very happy that you listened to me today. I appreciate you spending time with me. Hope you are, wherever you are, if you're here in the United States, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving week. I am going to be traveling tomorrow. We're going to try to do some version of the show. It might not be live, it might be on demand, but regardless, I hope you and your family have a wonderful week. I'm TJ Walker. See you tomorrow at some point.